Back here now on the show to get into the third topic on today's show. Some more offseason gradings, this time in the NFC East. We just finished talking about the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, I'm not too high on them, but we're going to talk about some more of the teams, the Commanders, the Giants, and the Philadelphia Eagles, of course, and just give them an overall grade on how they've done this offseason. So, without further ado, we're going to start off with the New York Giants. As you see on your screen, I got the graphics this time, guys. I brought them back. It was working this time. So I got this one up for you. The New York Giants, a C grade for the offseason for them. You know, big loss in Saquon Barkley and Xavier McKinney. I wasn't a big fan of that, honestly. When I saw that happen, and then just more details of how it all went down, you know, Saquon saying that the Giants didn't even offer him an extension, that he couldn't do anything to try maybe re-signing with the Giants because they didn't offer him anything. So he was just left with his hands in the air, trying to find a new solution for him and signing with the Philadelphia Eagles. There's a lot of uncertainty almost everywhere with this team, how they handled the Saquon situation, also having more distractions, it seems like, on top of their quarterback situation with Daniel Jones. They already are, you know, handcuffed to him because they gave him that massive extension, and because of that, now you have those rumors this offseason about looking for a new quarterback. They want to move on from him. Maybe they'll draft one this year. That probably won't sit too well with Daniel Jones. He had to answer questions about that already. Probably going to have to keep answering that at some points this regular season and next offseason as well. It also isn't great that he has $80 million guaranteed to that contract. So how they handled that, and now from where they were last offseason to where they find themselves this offseason, trying to make that change already, not sitting too well with me, as you would imagine. Then, with how bad it might have looked with losing also Xavier McKinney. Again, I didn't like the way that it just happened. The way that they didn't franchise tag him, almost just giving up in a sense. The way that, again, they didn't franchise tag him. They didn't really extend him or didn't offer him too much to try and keep him. Not something I could have just sided with and just really been on the same side of it. So that didn't sit too well with me, but it wasn't all bad for them. I'm giving them a rough time, but they did do some things that I liked by signing John Runyon, signing Jermaine Illuminor to their offensive line. And after that, they traded for Brian Burns to add to that defensive line with Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence. The defensive line is looking all right. The defense is definitely looking a bit more secure. There's a lot more security with them, I feel like, instead of the offense because of Daniel Jones and his health. I think Malik Neighbors is going to be a stud, but again, the quarterback situation, how the offensive line develops, who's going to be the running back. I know Devin Singletary is there, but what sort of production are you going to get out of him? And who else is going to step up instead of Malik Neighbors? I think the Giants really didn't do too much, and the losses that they had this offseason outweigh the gains, the additions that they brought in. So for me, they get a C grade in my grading system for this offseason. But with that being said, we're going to move on to the next team, the Philadelphia Eagles. Addressed almost everything this offseason. They addressed everything, and they get a letter A grade for me. A letter A grade because I found it hard to pick out anything that they almost did wrong that I didn't really do right. You know, you look over some of the things that they got done this offseason. They brought in 2 new coordinators in Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore. More experience there, more success out of those 2 guys compared to Brian Johnson and Sean Desai last year. So that should immediately make both sides of the ball a lot more reliable, I would use as the word. They also lost DeAndre Swift, but obviously they brought in Saquon Barkley to replace him, already upgrading there, as if they needed Saquon, really, talking honestly, did they really need Saquon on this team? They went out and signed him, sticking it to the face of the New York Giants, just making it even sweeter for them. So that was a great power move. I love it. I love that they did that. I love the pettiness from it. But then, talking about their own, chores that they had to get done with their own players. They extended Jordan Mailata. They extended Landon Dickerson, extended A.J. Brown, extended Devontae Smith, all being there for the next 5 years, aligning with the contracts of Saquon, with Jalen Hurts. Their core players, their game changers are all under contract for the foreseeable future. So they have all of that wiped off of their slate. They don't have to worry about it anymore. And in free agency, They brought in some good players that I really liked, and Devin White addressing a major hole that they had at linebacker, C.J. Gardner-Johnson to line him up alongside Reed Blankenship, another great player that they had in 2022 when they made the Super Bowl. He went on to the Detroit Lions, but luckily for them, they brought him back, which is going to be a major help for them. They also, in free agency, I guess would be my only real doubt about the Eagles, they essentially let go of Hassan Reddick and brought in Bryce Huff the other way from the New York Jets. Hassan Reddick went to the Jets, so it was almost like a trade, but technically they signed him and released those two players. So with Huff, I'm not really too sure how much he can contribute right away. Compared to Hassan Reddick, it gives me a little bit of doubt there. So that's really the only thing. And then when you talk about the NFL draft also, adding Quinyon Mitchell, how he fell to them is remarkable that they scooped him up in the first round, and also drafting Cooper DeJean to help out that secondary. And even later on in the draft, I like that they brought in Will Shipley, the running back, and also the linebacker Jeremiah Trotter for the personal reason that his dad played there, and also that I thought he was going to be a great player coming out of the draft there. So it's hard to pick out something that they did completely wrong. They addressed everything, and now they have a lot of pressure on them because they did everything right. They have the roster now. How are they going to plan out and execute in 2024? They've given themselves a good chance of doing it, but we just have to see how that all lays out. But getting into the next team, the third team on my list, the Washington Commanders, a B+ this offseason for a lot of changes that they made, not just on the roster and the personnel level, but the owner, Josh Harris, coming in, a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator. I think Jack Del Rio is also new. I could be wrong, but I think he might have been there last year. But regardless of that, a lot of changes from top to bottom throughout that whole organization. They brought in a whole new group of players, a whole new identity, some new ideas to try and finally flip this organization and finally get some success out of them, because I really like Dan Quinn coming in here. He has been overdue to get another head coaching job opportunity, and now he gets it with the Commanders, and he's going to have to play the Dallas Cowboys, but I think he's done a great job so far of bringing in the players that he would want. Also with Cliff Kingsbury, a good offensive mind, having success with Kyler Murray in Arizona. Now I think we'll have similar success with a similar skill set in Jaden Daniels, and along those lines, drafting Jaden Daniels, while it might have been a no-brainer, you would be surprised how many teams screw up one of those early picks. You know, you've seen it before with number one overall draft pick busts and number two picks that didn't really pan out. You see it all the time, more often than you would really know, honestly. But Jaden Daniels was a great pick for them. A guy that can be the face of your franchise going forward, have so much success with this team. I love that they drafted him. And on the free agent side of things, they added so many players that just really reinvigorates this team and their identity, with bringing in Dorrance Armstrong on the defensive side of the ball, Tyler Biotic, Nick Allegretti, Frankie Louvu, Bobby Wagner, Austin Eckler, Jeremy Chin, all these guys that might not pop out right away, but they're solid pieces that you always would love to have on this team. Bobby Wagner might be a little bit on the older side for some people. You know, some may believe that can he really make that big of an impact? This is one of the greatest linebackers we've seen in recent memory in the last decade. So I think he still has something in the tank, at least to bring from a leadership standpoint. Frankie Louvu is another one that's a great piece to have in there. Austin Eckler, while he might have a different image about him, a different role, he will still contribute to this team because they need dynamic playmakers like him in any aspect that they could get them. So that's great for them. They, on the negative side a little bit, where I felt they could have done more, bringing in somebody to replace Kendall Fuller a little bit, not adding another defensive back could come back to bite them. And also, like I mentioned, not adding another wide receiver to complement Brandon Ayuk. While that's still in the works, I think complement Terry McLaurin with Brandon Ayuk is what I was trying to say. Bringing in Brandon Ayuk, I think it's going to happen. There's too much smoke around it to not happen, in my opinion. The trade, what the Commanders give up for it will be interesting, but I think that is almost getting solidified with this team. And if they add someone of that caliber to Terry, this team is going to be very good. It's going to surprise a lot of people. I truly believe that. And the Commanders for right now get a B+ because they haven't done that big trade like I just finished talking about. If they did, they probably would have been an A or an A-. So they get a B for right now. But in saying that, the last team I will talk about, like I just finished talking about, the Dallas Cowboys, a D plus for the Cowboys. They haven't done anything. They have not done anything in this offseason. The salary cap, I know, is the main reason. They feel handcuffed by it. But again, that's their doing. That's their problem. That's the problem that they've sort of piled up on themselves because they haven't got these extensions done. And now you don't have enough money to sign anybody else. You brought in Eric Kendricks, Tony Pollard, and I want to see somebody else that's just slipping my mind. But regardless, it's only about 3 or 4 players, and it's not going to be enough when everybody else seems to be at least doing something, trying to get better, and the Dallas Cowboys are just sitting there because they haven't allowed themselves to because of the salary cap. And now a lot of uncertainty with Dak, like I mentioned, with CD, with the offensive line, running back, a new defensive coordinator, new ideas coming in. How is it just going to pan out with the defense? I don't think it's going to be as smooth as people would have thought, regardless of how talented they still are. It seems like there's too much dysfunction on the other parts of the organization that it seems like it is just piling over now in 2024, more so than it has in the last few seasons. They still have a lot of talent, like I mentioned, but have done the least in this division and have the most to lose, in my opinion, with all the pressure that's always on them, all the media attention. Everyone is just waiting for this moment to kill the Cowboys and sort of tell them, we told you so. This was never going to happen. What can go wrong will go wrong. All the things you hear, people are just waiting to see it happen. And I think now the Dallas Cowboys, unfortunately for them, have given everybody the best chance of seeing them now crash and burn this season because of all the wrongdoings. And they get a D-plus grade because of that. Maybe could have been lower. I wanted to be a little bit nicer here and have them at least some hope because, they still have great players, CD and Dak, at least playing out the last year of their deals. But hopefully they get one of them extended. But for right now in this offseason, with the lack of activity, we get a D-plus for the Dallas Cowboys. And that'll do it. That'll wrap it up for the offseason grades in the NFC East. Leave your thoughts in the comment section during the show or after the show on what you guys thought of the grades, and maybe I was too harsh on one team. Maybe I wasn't harsh enough on one of these teams. Let me know all your thoughts, like I mentioned, down below. But that'll wrap it up for that segment. We're going to head into another break, and when we return, more topics to talk about. Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, the quarterback battle going on with the Pittsburgh Steelers. What is it going to look like? Why do some people believe Russell Wilson is ahead of Justin Fields at this current moment? And also, a discussion point to bring up here on today's show. Is Jalen Hurts a top 15 quarterback? Somebody in the media has serious questions about that. I'm going to get to it and give my thoughts on it when we return. You're listening to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.